This was a chance for Dortmund to get revenge for the 4-0 demolition in the previous tie. And although Dortmund made a good start, a Hummel's red card in the first half gave Ajax the advantage, and in the end secured a 3-1 victory. Dortmund went into this game missing their most lethal attacker, Haaland, who is out with an injury. Tigges replaced him in the centre of a 3-man attack, as Dortmund lined up in a 4-3-3. Ajax were unchanged from the previous tie in a 4-2-3-1. We can see that this 4-2-3-1 doesn't tell the whole story, as when the fullbacks pushed on and Alvarez dropped back, it becomes more of a 3-4-3. The red card had a big influence on Dortmund, as they had to cover the gaps left by Hummels. Dortmund would look to play the ball out from the back through their centre-backs. The centre-backs would split and Witsel would drop back to provide an option. The two fullbacks moved up the pitch as Dortmund formed a 2-3-2-3 shape. The centre-backs then looked to play the ball to the fullbacks or to the other midfielders. But with Ajax covering passing options with 4 players, it meant that they had an extra man in midfield to close down when Dortmund midfielder received the ball. But with Ajax covering passing options with 4 players, it meant that they had an extra man in midfield to close down when Dortmund received the ball. However, Dortmund controlled the game early on by pressing Ajax high up the pitch, and in possession would form a 2-4-4 formation, with Bellingham joining the front line. The centre-backs, in particular Hummels, were allowed to bring the ball into Ajax's half with Witsel covering the space he left. Here, it's Akanji that steps out of the back line and into midfield, as Dortmund look to control the pitch. This then allows a midfielder to join the front line, as Dortmund have 5 attackers pressing against Ajax's 4 defenders. This prevents Ajax from dominating possession in the middle of the pitch. Dortmund look to get a better foothold of the game this time, by covering each defender and pressing Ajax closer to their goal. This often forced Ajax into doing something that they don't usually do, playing long balls. Fortunately, they have a physical centre forward in Hummel for this to be an option. Although Dortmund came out second best today, a special shout out must go to Jude Bellingham. Although just 18 years old, he shows all the promise of a top midfielder, leading the way in many areas for his team today. As we said before, Dortmund were very aggressive in pressing Ajax high up the pitch, but on occasions before the red card, Ajax were able to play out from the centre-backs. The 2 pivots split with Alvarez slotting between the 2 centre-backs, as the 2 fullbacks moved high up the pitch, creating lots of width. Gravenberch has a fixed position as the attacking pivot, but the wide attackers have more freedom. We could see the 2 wide attackers dropping back into the half spaces as they look to overload the midfield. But we could also see them drift out wide as they look to overload the wide areas with their fullbacks. So with Dortmund pressing high, Ajax had a problem as they could not play out through their defenders. However, they solved this problem by pushing one of their centre-backs into midfield and moving their fullbacks out wide to the touchline. This created an angle for the keeper, while this also allowed Ajax to have enough players in midfield. And it was this pattern that led to the red card, finding a fullback to play a pass to Antony, who was then fouled by Hummels. Things hadn't been going well for Ajax, but the red card gave them a chance to regroup and dominate possession. Dortmund sat back in a 4-4-1, looking to hit Ajax on the counter, and Ajax found it difficult to break them down. The extra player saw Ajax push their fullbacks against Dortmund's back line, and with the defenders occupied with the fullbacks, this freed up space for Antony on the left. Although the first was a deflection, it was Antony that provided all 3 assists for the goal. His positioning gave his team a passing option at all times. And it was also his trickery that had Hummel sent off. Dortmund started to defend more desperately and would sometimes have 7 defenders. The problem was that every time they cleared the ball, Ajax had extra players in the midfield to collect the ball and start another attack. This chart doesn't show everything about the game, as Dortmund had the better of the game until the sending off. Conclusion to this game: although Ajax had controlled the game in Amsterdam, they found it difficult to replicate that here, until the sending off. Dortmund's game plan of not allowing Ajax to control the midfield worked much better in this game.